Well, hello, spooks in training. In honor of Halloween, join us as we celebrate the thinning of the veil and wrap up our season of the supernatural with a ghostly tale. While many spirits only want to reconnect with the mortal plane, others have darker intentions. Tonight, we're visiting a family plagued by a malevolent entity who turned their world and their furniture upside down, resulting in the most violent haunting in modern-day Britain. I'm DreyOfTheDead, and it's time to feed your head. It was August of 1966. Jean and Joe Pritchard of East Yorkshire were headed to Devon for the bank holiday. Their daughter Diane accompanied them on the trip, but 15-year-old Philip had other plans. They allowed him to stay home on one condition: Grandma Sarah would be babysitting. Regardless, Philip was out of the house for most of the week, doing whatever teenagers did in 1960s England. And why not? It was warm and sunny out, which is also why Grandma was perplexed at the cold breeze sweeping through the house. When Philip returned home one afternoon, he was met by a strange white powder falling from, well, nowhere. It seemed to be coming from above, but it wasn't the ceiling. A little spooked, Grandma called for her daughter, Marie Kelly, who lived just across the street. When Marie looked for something to clean the powder off the floor, she slipped in a puddle in the kitchen. Strange, they hadn't spilled anything. The family attempted to soak up the water when suddenly more puddles appeared. The three looked at each other confused. What would cause something like that? A broken pipe? Condensation? They turned off the water valve just in case and called the water board, but when a city worker came to investigate, he was just as baffled by the scene. Later that evening, as Grandma watched TV, Philip made his way to the kitchen for a snack and found the floors and counters covered in sugar and tea leaves. "Grandma," he called. Sarah joined him in disbelief. Just then, there was a sound. Searching the kitchen, they found the tea dispenser button moving on its own, hot tea pouring out with each click. Once empty, the clicking sped up. "Stop it!" Grandma cried out. Silence. A sudden crash came from the hallway. Philip opened the hallway door just a bit. Nothing. He opened it all the way, and they both peered in. Just then, the light turned on by itself, frightening both of them. Cautiously, they peered in and noticed something odd. The plant that usually sat at the foot of the steps was halfway up the stairs, and its pot was at the top. This time from the kitchen. They ran over to find a cupboard door pulsing as if something were trying to get out. Philip jerked it open. Nothing. Silence. Terrified, they fled from the house once again, returning with Marie, who also witnessed the cabinet doors fluttering. A woman of logic and reason, Marie marched over to the neighbors whose home was attached to their own. "Is there some kind of racket going on around here?" The neighbors looked at each other, puzzled. "We thought it was you." Having had quite the day, Marie returned home, while Philip and Grandma decided to turn in for the night. As Philip laid in bed, Grandma chatted with him from the doorway. What was going on? there had to be some kind of logical explanation. Just as Granny turned to head off, Philip's dresser started swaying on its own. Needless to say, they decided to stay at Marie's for the night. By the time the family returned from their trip, all strange occurrences had stopped. The incident had become nothing more than a passing thought, though entering the kitchen was met with a bit of reluctance from Philip and Grandma. After 2 years, what happened at the house began to seem like a distant memory. Perhaps even something they could look back on and laugh at. The Pritchards could not have been more wrong. Just after Diane's 14th birthday, she was awoken by someone breathing in her ear. But when she looked around, no one was in the room with her. This happened a number of times, along with banging noises throughout the house. Cupboard doors once again began fluttering. Framed photos were slashed and knocked off the walls. Foul odors filled the home. Marmalade and mustard were smeared on the stairs and doorknobs. The unrelenting sound of barn animals resonated at odd hours of the day. After their initial surprise, the family came to tolerate whatever was in their home, even jokingly referring to the entity as Fred. According to Pat Holden, younger cousin to the Pritchard children, the family even experimented with Fred on some occasions. In one case, Jean placed eggs in a wooden box and sat on the lid. Soon, the eggs began whipping through the air, smashing against floors and walls. Jean checked the box throughout the mayhem, to find that with each new one thrown, one was missing from the box. The activity often picked up when guests came by. The banging sounds increased as plates whizzed by their heads. As the strange happenings intensified, the family eventually contacted police, who could do nothing but watch furniture flipping over and objects flying through the air. Growing more and more desperate, the family contacted the church, who performed 2 exorcisms on the house. But this, it seemed, only made Fred more violent. Soon the family's crucifixes were shattered into pieces, and their walls were painted with red and black inverted crosses, though no paint was present in the house. Just when the family seemed to hit their breaking point, the strange events suddenly stopped. After a few weeks, the Pritchards thought they were in the clear, but the attacks came back stronger than ever, and Fred decided to focus them on Diane. The nightly breathing in Diane's ear was soon accompanied by being thrown out of bed. Some nights, she'd fall asleep in bed and wake up on the floor with the mattress on top of her. And more than a few times, she was pinned by heavy furniture. It was at this point in time that Fred began to make himself visible to the family. In perhaps the most terrifying display yet, Jean and Joe awoke one night to find a figure in a black hooded cloak hovering above their bed. It watched them for a moment and then slowly faded away. The paranormal activity reached a dangerous crescendo when the unseen entity grabbed Diane by the throat and dragged her up the stairs, leaving her with bruises for weeks. The family was advised to leave garlic bulbs throughout the house, and just like that, their disembodied guest was gone. Over the years, a number of investigators delved into the history of the area and found some very interesting details. Wars were fought on the town's land, and there was documented evidence of a former monastery in the immediate area. What paranormal investigator Tom Cuniff discovered is thought to be the most likely reason for what the family experienced. He found that the house was built directly on top of former gallows. Tom claimed to find record of a 15th century Cluniac monk who was hung for the sexual assault and murder of a young girl. The phenomenon is now best known as the Black Monk of Pontefract. 40 years later, Pat Holden decided to make a movie based on the unexplainable events. His mother Renee was wife to one of Gene's siblings and witnessed the bizarre happenings firsthand. Pat interviewed the family before filming and brought his cousin Diane back to the home, where she refused to step foot into the living room. While promoting the movie in 2012, producer Bill Bungay found that the family had listed the house for sale and bought it at a very cheap price. He held the red carpet premiere on the premises and now rents the house out to paranormal enthusiasts. Over the years, a number of neighbors have had run-ins with the black-cloaked figure in their own homes, and many visitors of 30 East Drive have claimed to obtain photo documentation of the spirit. Claire Cowell's photo of the Black Monk's arm clutching rosary beads is considered the most conclusive photo to date. Current neighbor Carol Fieldhouse said things started to take a strange turn shortly after the house was sold. One day, she spotted Philip tidying up the yard and asked if he had sold the house to one of his nephews. "Oh, I figured it must be them. I heard the telly blasting all night." There's no TV, Carol. The house is empty." His face went pale. "Oh God, it's happening again." If you enjoyed this strange but true tale, be sure to subscribe and check out previous episodes covering everything from haunted dolls to house stalkers. Yes, it's as weird as it sounds. If you'd like to support the future of these videos, consider joining my Patreon, where you can also enjoy blooper reels and behind-the-scenes footage. These are just a few of the patrons who make these videos possible. Thank you so much for joining me on this season of the Supernatural. I hope that you have a safe and fun Halloween, and as always, be well and stay strange.